Storytime about how I married my blind date after knowing each other for 2 weeks. After I broke up with my ex who cheated on me 4 times, I swore off men. But my friends and family were constantly telling me that I should at least try dating other people. I went 2 full years without dating anyone, and it was the best decision I ever made. Instead of going out on dates, I decided to take that time to work on myself. I prioritized myself and started doing the things that I've always wanted to do. For example, I always wanted to learn how to play the piano, so I put myself into piano classes. I also started taking belly dancing classes, and I signed up to Pilates. I also decided to focus on my mental health because I realized that I always depended on validation from men. I was the happiest I'd ever been. My family even saw the changes in me, and my mom told me that maybe it was time for me to start dating. Last year, my sister signed up to a bunch of dating apps, and she actually met some really good men. I really thought about it long and hard, and I decided to sign up for one too. And I told myself that I would take it slow and easy. Finally, I went on my first date. It didn't go very well because my date only talked about himself and didn't ask me any questions. But then my second date was this amazing guy. And I kid you not, it was love at first sight. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I married my blind date after knowing each other for only 2 weeks. So I walk into the restaurant and I know what he looks like. He was already sitting at the table, but as soon as we locked eyes, it was instant attraction. But not just attraction, it was love. I honestly don't know how to describe it. It was this feeling I'd never felt before. When I sat down at the table, we instantly connected. We talked about everything, from our childhoods up until that point. We talked about school, friends, even our favorite foods, favorite colors, places we wanted to visit. I'm talking about everything. We even talked about our family problems, which I had never done that with anyone else. We basically ordered the entire menu. And over the next 5 hours, we talked and ate and laughed. You know when there's moments of silence in a conversation, and sometimes it's awkward? There was none of that. We were constantly talking and asking each other questions. The restaurant actually had to tell us to go home. When we said goodbye, he asked me if he could take me to breakfast the next day. And of course, I said yes. As I was driving home, I knew that this was the guy I wanted to marry. For the next week, we hung out almost every single day when we weren't working. And we texted each other day and night. He would send me paragraphs. By the end of the week, he asked me if he could meet my parents. We had a wonderful dinner and my parents loved him. He put so much effort into talking to them and even brought them gifts. The following day, I met his family, and they loved me too. The following Monday, he asked me to move in with him, and I said yes. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I married my blind date after only knowing each other for 2 weeks. After 1 week of knowing each other, he asked me to move in. Like I said, my parents loved him, but when I told them that we were going to move in together after knowing each other for 1 week, they thought it was a terrible idea. But there was no way I was backing out on moving in with him. I told him that this was a risk I was willing to take. I was a grown adult, so I had the final word. That very same week, I started moving all my stuff in. After living together for 3 days, we were having so much fun. I was living with my best friend. We would tell each other everything. We decided to host a dinner for our family and friends. His family got along really well with my family, and his friends ended up loving me. By the end of that second week, my boyfriend was talking about getting married, and I said it would be a dream to marry him. And guess what? The next day, he takes me out for an early breakfast. While we're sitting at the restaurant, the server brings over a box, and he tells me to open it. And inside was a beautiful emerald ring. I had told him on our first date that emeralds were my favorite stones. He got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. And I said yes. In order to avoid having to convince our families, we went straight to the court and got married the following day. Yes, I know it's totally crazy, but I am so happy. We've been married now for 3 years. We've traveled to 8 different countries, and we also decided to have children. I never thought I would marry the man of my dreams after 2 weeks of knowing him, but my risk paid off. What should we name our first baby?
Should I confess to my boyfriend that I'm cheating on him with his dad? My boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 years. I have to admit, our relationship is pretty boring. He's not the most fun guy, and he doesn't really ever make me laugh a lot. On the other hand, I'm always making him laugh. I put all those things aside because he is a very good person, and he does take care of me. His job requires him to be away from work for 6 to 8 months. He works on a boat, so this means I have a lot of time to myself. No, I never cheated on him before his dad came along. But let me explain. My boyfriend did not grow up with his dad. His dad went to prison a long time ago for something he stole. No, it wasn't something terrible. When his dad got out of prison, my boyfriend was already 20 years old. My boyfriend didn't like the idea of his dad coming to live with him and his mom. So they had a lot of fights. But his dad made every effort to try to make his son comfortable. The first time I met my dad's boyfriend, I noticed that he was very good looking. He was also in amazing shape. He loves to read books and listen to music, and he even started his own business as soon as he got out of prison, which is already doing well. He told my boyfriend to quit his job and to work for him, but my boyfriend refused. So my boyfriend had to go away for his job, which meant he was going to be away for 6 months. During this time, I decided to visit his mom as much as I could so that she wouldn't get lonely. And this is when things started heating up with his dad. Part 2 is up. Should I confess to my boyfriend that I'm cheating on him with his dad? When my boyfriend left for work for 6 months, I started going to visit his mom and his dad every single week. His mom and dad were still married, but they were not together. So it's not like the dad had to be loyal to the mom. My boyfriend's mom would usually cook dinner, I would eat with her, and then I would sit down to watch a movie with her sometimes. His dad would sometimes join us, but not all the time. Like I mentioned, my boyfriend's dad is very good looking. He caught me staring at him a few times. And I'll admit, I was really embarrassed, but at the same time, I kind of didn't care. One night when I was watching a movie with her, she told me that she was going to go to bed. I told her I would go home, but then she said no. She told me I should stay to finish watching the movie. That's when my boyfriend's dad comes over and sits on the couch with me. And he says, "I'll keep you company." As we were watching the movie, I could feel the tension. And I loved it. I hadn't felt anything like this in the whole time that I was with my boyfriend. I mean, my boyfriend and I rarely even kissed. When the movie finished, I got up and turned the television off. He also gets up from the couch. That's when he grabbed my hand and turned me around. He grabbed my face and started kissing me. And I have to admit, I loved it. He pulled me into a corner and we kept kissing for a few minutes. That's when he asked me if I wanted to go upstairs with him and I said yes. And we did it. And it was actually amazing. Yes, I did feel guilty, but I wanted to live my life and enjoy these moments. And unfortunately, my boyfriend just didn't give that to me. We were inseparable after that. Part 3 is up. Should I confess to my boyfriend that I'm cheating on him with his dad? After we did the you know what, my boyfriend's dad and I were inseparable. He would come over to my apartment almost every single night and just sleep over. And this became a routine. It's like we couldn't keep our hands off each other and we loved it. And not once did we ever talk about my boyfriend, his son. This went on the entire time my boyfriend was gone. A few days before my boyfriend arrived, his dad and I decided that we would just try to stay away from each other when he was home. Well, let me tell you, it didn't last very long. My boyfriend came home and I felt nothing. It was just like before he left. He barely even kissed me and we went back to our regular life. So I called his dad up and we started meeting in different fancy hotels around the city. It was so fun and exciting. After a few weeks, I noticed that my boyfriend really changed. He was barely touching me and didn't really want anything to do with me. So I confronted him. And I know I have no right, but I wanted to find out what was going on. My boyfriend told me that he felt our relationship was stale, and I told him that I agreed. That's when he told me that we should separate. But we're technically still together. Now here's my problem. I think I just want to break up with my boyfriend, but I want to get with his dad, as in make it official. But his dad told me that he would never make it official with me. So now I'm stuck. I really like him and I have so much fun with him. Also, should I just tell my boyfriend the truth? What do you guys think I should do? Is it okay that my boyfriend is trying to convince me to let him do the dirty with my cousin? Because we have an open relationship, he feels like he can do certain things in front of me. For example, like flirting with other women in front of me. While we were having dinner with my cousin who was visiting, he kept making comments about how hot she was and how her and I look exactly like twins. My cousin was clearly super uncomfortable, so I asked him to stop, which he did. That's when my boyfriend dragged me into our bedroom and asked me if he could do it with her. I said absolutely not. One of the rules in our open relationship is that we can't choose anybody we already know. He told me that he technically did not know my cousin. I told him family was off limits. He asked me to think about it. I drove my cousin home and that's when she told me that my boyfriend was really hot. And I was shocked. I thought she was uncomfortable at dinner. I pulled the car over and asked her if she was interested in him. That's when she said she overheard our conversation. Yep, she heard when my boyfriend was asking me if he could do it with her. She started to laugh and told me that it was okay and that she wouldn't tell my parents. Then she told me that an open relationship is always a bad idea and that nothing good will come of it. I asked her again if she was interested in him and she said maybe. She says, "You should just let us do it." Part 3 is up. Story time about how my boss confessed to me that he likes me and now he's pressuring me to go out with him. Disclaimers in all my story time is that I'm on Instagram. I've been working at my job for 6 months now. Ever since I started, my boss has been very, very nice to me. If he gets himself coffee, he usually brings me one, and he always offers to buy me my lunch. Of course, I usually say no because I always bring my lunch with me. And also, I just think it's weird that he's always offering. Several times I caught him staring at me, and he would offer to do random things, like walk me to my car. In other words, he was showing a lot of interest. At first, I just wanted to believe that he was just a really nice guy, but I noticed that he wasn't that way with anyone else except for me. So anytime that he would offer to do something for me, or if he would bring me coffee, I made sure to say thank you and seem grateful. I told my boyfriend about my boss, and my boyfriend was convinced that my boss liked me. He told me I shouldn't be as nice as I was, but I didn't want to seem ungrateful or rude. A few weeks ago, we had an office party. Of course, my boyfriend came along with me and everything was fine. Everyone brought their husbands and wives, including my boss. By the way, his wife is super beautiful and really nice. She even had the party catered by one of the best restaurants in town. As my boyfriend and I were heading home, he turns to me and tells me, "Your boss definitely likes you." I asked him why he thought that, and he said that my boss couldn't stop staring at me the whole night. That's when my boyfriend insisted that I should just quit. We got into a huge argument that night. Part 2 is up. Storytime about how my boss confessed to me that he likes me and now he's pressuring me to date him. Part 2. My boyfriend told me that my boss had been staring at me the whole night. Then he started insisting that I should just quit my job. We basically fought the entire night. I told him I would never quit my job and that my boss was harmless. But it turns out that my boyfriend was right. When I went back to work, my boss started asking me a lot of questions about my boyfriend. He asked me how long we'd been together, if the relationship was serious, if we lived together. He tried to make it seem casual. On the 5th question, I asked my boss if he was okay. And he laughs and says, "I just want to make sure you got a good guy with you." But he sounded so jealous instead.
A few days later, I caught my boss staring at me again. And this time I got really annoyed. I stared back at him and waved. That's when he waved back and smiled at me. At the end of the day, he offered to walk me to my car. And I said yes. As we were walking to my car, he starts telling me that he thought I looked really pretty at the party. And that he wanted to confess that he couldn't stop staring at me all night. That's when I turned to him and I said, yeah, my boyfriend noticed. He responds, well, your boyfriend's very lucky to be with you. And that I was clearly asking for attention with the dress that I wore. By the way, my dress was a long sleeve turtleneck that went below my knees. That's when he says, there's nothing wrong with a little flirtation. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my boss confessed to me that he likes me and now he's pressuring me into dating him. After he told me that there was nothing wrong with us flirting, I told him it was totally inappropriate and that I didn't feel comfortable with that. He then laughed and said, you'll loosen up eventually. I went home and I told my boyfriend everything. My boyfriend went berserk. He started insisting that I quit again. I told him I could handle the situation, that my boss was not going to do anything to me. He then got so mad that he actually left to his parents' house. He told me he would come back to live with me after I quit. But here's the thing, if the tables were turned, I would never ask my boyfriend to quit his job because his boss was flirting with him. I love my job and I don't think it's fair that I have to quit because my boss is flirting with me. Instead, I decided that I would go back to work and simply ignore my boss. But this actually had the opposite effect. My boss started coming on to me even stronger. He came up to me while I was having lunch and asked me if I was ignoring him. I was honest and said yes, a little. That's when he told me that we should talk after work. He walked me to my car and on the way, he told me that he likes me and that he's liked me since the day I started working there. He even said that it's pretty much the only reason why I got the job. But then of course he complimented me on all my work. As he was saying all of this, I just stayed quiet. I really didn't know how to respond. That's when my boss tells me that we should go on a date and that we could have a fruitful relationship. I love my job so much, I'm actually considering saying yes to at least one date. My boyfriend is still not talking to me, by the way. Now my boss even sends me text messages telling me how good I look in the office. And no, I can't report him to anybody. And I don't want to jeopardize my job. Last week, my boss even gave me a raise. And to be honest, I'm really happy about it. My dream is to buy myself a house. But at what cost? Should I say yes to just one date? Or should I say no and suffer the consequences? Or should I quit? But that's not fair either. What do you guys think I should do?